this is how we do laying hens on our little farm here, Glendon and Zora Rhoades. We've got, right now I got about 12.5 of these, I think they call them Isa Browns in Britain and Europe. They call them red layers here at our local hatchery. These are all a year and a half old, other than maybe 1 or 2 from an older batch that are still around, but most of them we raised from chicks last year, about the same time we were raising some broiler chicks. We keep them on fresh ground about once a week or so. We move them, and that's because we've got electric net enclosure. So this electric net enclosure is made as poultry netting. It's got a fiberglass post every few yards. That fiberglass post has 2 steel stakes on it connected with a crossbar, so you can just step it into the ground. That keeps predators out, but also keeps the chickens contained. So I'll just show you quickly. This is where we had them last week. You can kind of see where the fence set. I had it going around those pine trees down there. There's some small spruce trees that are trying to get going and never done very well, and I wanted to clean up the bottom of those. So the fence came around like this. You can kind of see the distribution of manure over the landscape, over the area, and also how much they graze the grass from one side to the other. And that little brown strip is where the electric has actually killed down some of the grass there. And this top portion is where their roost was each day. So you can see sort of a square of heavier manure load there, another one of heavier manure load there. We had their roost running along this top section. So the roost gets moved nightly, maybe every other night, depending on how many chickens you have in it. And then the rest of the run is obviously for them to run around in. They do a great job at dethatching. You can see how much they've raked all the loose leaf matter down from this area. It's just like someone took a rake over it. All of this is from chicken disturbance. Eaten all the leaves off these alfalfa plants. Left the stem, ate all the leaves off. And you can see this looks just like someone took a steel rake to it and cleaned all that debris out from the base of the tree. For some reason they love scratching around the base of trees. So they clean those up really nicely. That's what we were hoping for. Hopefully give those trees a little less risk of fungal infection. They're not so happy. So I think that'll improve it. And obviously they manure around it at the same time. So here's the pen they're in now. And again, it's got a few trees in it, and they've only been in this pen for a few days. But they've already cleaned those up. Matter of fact, they cleaned those up within a few hours of being in here. I could already tell they were under the trees, scratching that crowded vegetation out from them. And I'll show you a couple trees that they never have been around. You can see how much thicker growth of weeds and stuff kind of strangling the bottom of that tree. So that's what they're cleaning up. And the way we keep this pen electrified, so like I said, you step in the posts all the way around. We usually put another steel post as a guy out and just a piece of poly string off of a hay bale out to that to keep the corners tight. I'm not sure that's completely essential, but we do it. It makes it a little tidier. And then at some point at the end of your fence, we've tied the 2 ends of the fence together here to form a full loop enclosure. And those have these little metal tabs on them that connect up to all the wires on the fence. And we make up a lead. So this fence is hot and it goes around a lot of our garden. And then we have a reel of poly wire that is attached to that fence via a little bare wire lead. And then this clip comes off of that spool. And all of this is live right now, all the way up to this clip, which is just get my camera to focus there, which is just a clothespin with a screw through there. And the wire comes up and is wrapped around the bottom of that screw so that the screw head inside is hot. And then we just wrap that up with electrical tape so it doesn't shock you in the meantime. Sometimes it still does if you're barefoot, which give you a little bit of a shock. And then that clips easily onto the bare metal there. and now your whole fence is hot. So I don't know if you can hear it or not, but it's popping. And that whole fence is hot, and then anytime we come up here to do chores, we can just quickly unclip that, toss it to the side, and the whole fence is no longer live. So the beauty of electric fence is before they have too much of an impact on the grass, you're able to move them to a new area. You know, chicken houses usually have this sort of moonscaped area around the entrance of the house where it's nothing but bare dirt and chicken manure. It's unhealthy soil. There's no plant life on it because the soil has been impacted too heavily, and it's just not a nice place to be. It's not a healthy place to be, and if you want to keep it clean, you've got to continually either bring new dirt in to cover that old dirt, scrape the old dirt out, and scrape all the manure out. And the same with the house. The floor of chicken houses is usually a really disgusting place to be, but the fact that we're able to move them constantly with electric fence means they're in fresh grass, fresh ground. The grass is constantly being able to use that chicken waste, chicken manure, rather than be poisoned by it, because it doesn't allow it to build up to toxic levels. So key to that is the chicken house that's mobile. So this works as our roosts. Let's have a look inside. Hopefully the camera can pick that up all right. Yeah. So you can see it's built in a wedge shape, and there's another support bar that goes below the roof at about comfortable chicken perch height. So you see that this girl here doesn't have her head right in the roof, but she's pretty close to the roof. And that dimension between the roof support and the roost support fits the height of a chicken. And those roosts go all the way up. And we're not using the space above our nesting boxes, but you certainly could put 2 more roosts up there. So this has capacity for about 50 birds. And then our nesting area is just under here. And you access that from a door in the back of the unit. Really key here is the floor is made from 1.5 by 1.5 wire mesh, like it's used for fencing or for stucco wire. And that just allows the poop to fall freely through. If you use even chicken wire, I think it'll plug up with time, and then the manure won't fall through anymore. So that mesh floor that allows the poop to fall through easily is really important to this design. There's a roost bar right as you go into the nesting box that they can land on, but also that can be raised up to keep them out if you have trouble with them roosting in the nesting box at night. So if we come around here to the back, there's a door here. By the way, this is all designed to be very lightweight. So we try to use the lightest members that still give us enough structural stability, and then the whole thing is covered in sheet plastic rather than metal or wood or vinyl, because the sheet plastic is so much lighter. And it's, you know, semi-disposable. This is made of silage plastic, which is a waste byproduct from the grain industry around here. They use it for making solids. They also use it for temporarily storing grain. So we get it by the roll, used stuff, which is gone to the landfill, and we cut it in pieces that work, and then skin a lot of our mobile infrastructure with it because it's so light, and because it's free, because it's waste otherwise. Okay, so we just open this back up, and you have access to the full run of the nesting area. Now this was set up where you can use it as a rollaway nest box, but your angle changes depending on the terrain you're in. And sometimes that means you end up with cracked eggs, and then they can get in the habit of eating those cracked eggs. And so we've had some trouble with that in the past, and so we've gone to just nesting boxes made from milk crates. Those just have some straw in the bottom of them, and the girls like those a lot. So I think we'll stick with that, the nesting boxes, and then we don't have to worry about how level the ground is that we're moving this on. And we're moving it, like I said, daily or every other day, so we don't want a big to-do every time we move it trying to level it. It really increases the length of your chores. And so this whole infrastructure sits on a dolly. This is a dolly made of a T-post, a steel T-post like you'd use for permanent fencing, and an axle made of threaded rod that goes through this wheel and is strapped to that T-post just with fairly strong wire. And that T-post has another wheel on the other side of it. So this wheel isn't mounted to the unit at all. If I lift the unit up, you can actually roll that out from under the whole unit. So that sits there. If we want to put another dolly, we have another dolly made up exactly the same way. We can move that dolly to the front edge of the unit, put another one under the back edge of it, and it's very easy to move along. If we're moving it quite some distance, say if we wanted them in a different part of the yard now, maybe eating some garden waste, we put the other dolly underneath and move it all the way across the yard. But for just daily moves, it's quite easy to just push along. The back sort of just slides along the ground, and very easy to push ahead. So like I said, we do that about once a day, maybe every other day. And I just moved it up there now, and you can see the amount of manure load from just one night of roosting in that area. So now we've moved off of that, and the manure load from the next night will be in a new area. And so about the time we run out of space within this run, we'll set up the fence in a new area. And if you do that in the evening, you can take your fence down, set it up in a new area, make sure no dogs get your chickens for that hour or two before sundown, and then they'll all roost in the unit, and you can move the unit with the chickens in it into the new pen. That's usually what we do. Or, let your kids catch all the chickens and put them in the new pen. Our kids like to do that sometimes too. Anyway, if you had two sets of netting, you could certainly set the next one up and open the fence between them so that the chickens go straight in and aren't allowed to free range at all. But in this yard, we have some dogs, but they're not going to attack chickens in an hour or two. They might if you left the chickens out for a couple of weeks. But that hour or two, we just let them free range, and they run around the yard, pick up some gravel from the driveway if they're a little shy on gravel, and if they need some mineral for some reason that they're a little bit low on, they can access that through the yard, and then they come back as the sun goes down into their shelter. They know where to roost, and then we move that roost up to the new location. If you move it to the new location before they come home to roost, sometimes they get confused. I haven't had much trouble with it, but I know other producers that say don't move your roost too far, more than about 20 feet without the chickens in it, or they come back and roost right on the ground in wherever their roost used to be. So I think that's the basic setup. I did go ahead and when I designed this, the front corner is waste if you skin it in. So I didn't. I skinned straight down once we get to the bottom roost. And then that front forms a nice little shelf, and we put water on it. I've hung a couple of feeders off this as well. There's a rope that sits there, hangs in case you ever want to drag it by a rope. This fits in here as a door. Anytime we need to lock the girls in, we can lock them in with that door. Just a couple of turn latches there. So that door gives you another potential option. You can, if you want, if you're going to move your fence the next morning, when all the girls go to bed and you come out here for evening chores, put the door on so they can't get back out in the morning, and then come out early the next morning and move them and move pin, and then they're contained for that moving process. I think that's what we would do if we were worried about the dogs, getting them in the meantime. And then as far as chores go, we come down here with a bucket of water to fill their water trough, and then we have a bin of grain always pretty close by, pretty handy, that we can fill feeders from. And every now and then when it empties, we bring a wheelbarrow of grain down here. So that works pretty easily, pretty simply. And then each time we move, we'll have to run a jumper lead from our spool over to wherever the new gate is, the new edge of the pen, and hang it off. We just hang it off another post, like that orange post there, close enough that we can clip the clip onto the fence. So that works pretty good for us, because figuring out how to connect up to electric can be, is something that shouldn't be overlooked when you're setting up a system like this. So ours usually jumpers off a bit of fence that we have around our garden anyway, just to keep the dogs off our garden and provide a little extra security if our goats get out of their fence. Our goats are in a similar setup over there. I can do a video on them as well. So I think that's about it for the layer setup. I kind of need someone here to ask me questions on the stuff I've missed. I do have a little tool here that's pretty handy. Every now and then one of the girls decides to lay an egg on the floor of the unit. We haven't had that happen in quite a while, but if we ever do, this little wire loop on the end of a wooden handle works great. You just slip it under the egg and the egg sits in the loop just like it would a spoon, and you pull it out. And on the other end, it's got a chicken catching wire on it. Just a wire doubled over like that, and you slip it around the foot of the chicken like that, and just pull the chicken towards you until you can grab it with your hands. And that works pretty effectively too. Okay, so I think that's it. Mobile roost and nesting boxes inside a temporary netting enclosure.